Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking about books that I didn't love. They're all 2-star reads. As much as I am very rare with my 5-star reads, I'm very rare with my 1-star reads, and it has to take a lot for me to go, yeah, I truly hated this and it's 1 star. Most of the time, if it is 1 star, I can find something that I like about it. It's a 1.5. This year, so far I've had a really good reading year. Most of the books I've read were either 5 or 4 stars. A handful of 3 stars. And for the most part, I don't see any books that I truly disliked enough that I rated it 1 star. But let's get into my list. The first book on my list is Well Matched by Jen DeLuca. I saw this while I was shelving. I was like, oh, this looks like a fun romance. And I find myself in that kind of headspace right now where I just want to read romances. So I took it home, not realizing it was part of a series. Like, it still reads as a standalone, but I feel like if I actually read the series in order, I would have understood a lot of the like in-joke remarks that the author kept making. So that probably really hindered my enjoyment of the book. I also don't think I was the intended audience. Our main character is older, 40, 50 years old probably. She has a child in high school, and she is set on like selling her house and moving on from her divorce and really being able to enjoy the life that she wants to lead. She's living in this town for her kid, and now that her kid is about to graduate from high school and go to college, she feels that, all right, I don't want to be in this small town anymore. I moved here for my kid, and now that she's out of the nest, as it were, I want to move on and really enjoy my life now. Because she wants to move and sell the house, she's prepping the house, and she has her friend who is much younger than she is, probably like 10, 15 years younger. At least that's the vibe I got. He would come over and like help paint and help work on things in the house. He also does this Renaissance fair that her daughter also does. And so that's like a group of people that she feels kind of outside of. And the more she got to know this guy, the more she's like, all right, I guess I can also help out with this Renaissance fair. And this is how they get to know each other more, and they, you know, things progress from there. Like I said, I think I was just missing a lot of in-jokes, and I'm not the correct audience for this, so I felt like I was an outsider as well. It was still fun. I still had a decent enough time reading it. Like, I didn't want to quit reading it, but I had to rate it 2 out of 5 stars because it really wasn't, I don't see me going back to this series. The next book on my list, I was surprised as hell that I did not like it. I am a huge Victoria Schwab fan. I love V.E. Schwab. She's Victoria Schwab in her like middle grade YA books, but as an adult writer, she's V.E. Schwab. And this book is one of her adult books. Or am I mistaken? Does she does that only with fantasy novels? I'm a little lost here. No surprise. But she switches between Victoria Schwab and V.E. Schwab. And this next book, now that I'm done just rambling about, it's Gallant by V.E. Schwab. And I did not like this. Huge fan of her stuff. I usually enjoy it. I usually rate her stuff like 4 or 5 stars. But I just could not get behind this one. And there was nothing wrong with the story per se. It just couldn't keep me engaged. Olivia is our main character, and she grew up in this foster home. And she gets a letter as she's about to leave because she's now aged out, that her family wants her to come home. Like, they finally found where she is, and they write a letter for her to come home to the family estate. And she has the ability to see ghosts. She has dreams, and she has her mother's old journal that says that she shouldn't go back home, but she goes back home anyways. And things kind of unravel from there. And I think there's just a lot going on in the story. Like, we find out who truly wrote the letter. We find out what the curse is of the place. And once you find out, at least once I found out what the issue was, I wasn't necessarily like intrigued by it. Logically, there really wasn't anything in the story. I just couldn't get invested enough to root for people, which is why I ended up rating this 2 out of 5 stars. It was well written. Victoria is a great writer. It's just, this one just didn't do it for me. And I can't tell you how much I was disappointed in that. Now this next one, to be fair, was probably not the book's fault. It's a mystery book, and I'm not a huge fan of mystery books to begin with. It's The Woman in the Library by Solari Gentile, and I picked it up because it's set in Boston. I recognized a lot of the places that was like mentioned in the book, and every time something was mentioned that I recognized, like, ooh, I know that place. I think at one point, like, they go to this restaurant or this diner called the Friendly Toast in Back Bay, and that is one of my favorite places. I love the Friendly Toast. And it's like, oh yeah, it's a popular diner. I'm like, heck yeah, it is, and with good reason. But as much as I enjoyed the location, I just didn't like the characters. I feel like our main character kept doing stupid shit. Like, this was a story within a story, like, and it kept flipping between the two perspectives. Like, this writer is writing a mystery novel set in Boston, and she's sending her pen pal like pieces of the story. And how do I want to word this? And her pen pal is actually a fan, and it gets increasingly obvious that this fan is not a safe person to be communicating with. And in the story that she's writing, our main character is at the Boston Public Library and a murder takes place. She's with this group of people, and they all kind of like talk about and investigate like how this could have happened. And that main character like falls in love with someone from that group who's actually one of the main suspects. And all I can think of is like, you're doing a lot for somebody you just met. You don't know if this person is truly innocent, and you're like, yeah, I love him, so of course he's innocent. No, that is not smart. So I just kept being super angry at that, so I couldn't get invested in that. And the side story with the writer and the pen pal, I feel like that was an unnecessary like plot line as well. I feel like it could have been one or the other, not both. I finished it because I was curious enough to see who actually did the thing by the end, but I didn't care about the characters at all. So obviously this one just wasn't for me. This next one was another one that I was disappointed in, because I thought this would be in my wheelhouse and I would enjoy it. It was By the Book by Jasmine Guillory, and this was a Beauty and the Beast retelling. Basically, our main character Isabel is working for this publishing house, and she is really struggling to get by with her job. And she overhears that this big high-profile author has been postponing like writing his book, and so she volunteers to go over to his house because the conference that she's at is in his area. She goes over to his house to talk to him to see if he can like submit pages, and she somehow finagles it where she stays with him, and they reluctantly work together on making sure this book gets done. And the longer that they work together, of course, they start to fall in love, and they find any other excuse to tell her boss, like, oh, she needs to stay longer. I liked the idea of the story, and it does hit the trope that I like, where a grumpy guy has a relationship, whether it's platonic or romantic, with this fun, quirky girl. But it didn't quite hit the notes for me. I also, like, whenever I read romance, I want it to be a little bit on the spicier things, and I should have known better when I saw it was published by Disney, that we would not have any sort of spice, and this would be very much a fade to black book. But I wasn't expecting it, and was actually kind of mad when we finally had this slow burn and this build up only to get a fade to black. I'm like, wait, what the hell is this? This isn't what I wanted. So although I did appreciate that we delved into like mental health with men, because that's why our main character's like love interest, Beau, is why he's like a beast, because we learned about his past. And although I appreciated that, I didn't really care to know him. So I wasn't super invested in the romance aspect, and the romance aspect is the main point of the book. So although it was fun in places, like it kept me engaged just enough to see it to the end, this was another one that really wasn't for me. Now, the last book on my list is actually a nonfiction book. So if you're unaware, I don't know if I said it in this video, I freelance as an actor, and I read a lot of like self-help books to see how I can better myself in that industry, in that field rather. And I am terrible at networking. I'm not good at it. I don't know how to network without making it seem like I'm talking to you because I want to network with you. Because it just seems smarmy and skeezy, and it doesn't feel genuine. And I'm trying to be better about that. And so I was reading a book that recommended Never Eat Alone and Other Secrets to Success, One Relationship at a Time by Keith Ferrazzi. The book I was reading recommended this if you want to be better about your networking. And so I was like, all right, I'll pick this up and I'll try this. And it had some interesting tips. And as much as it had interesting tips, I couldn't help but think, I could never do this. For the most part, networking is really taking the jump and taking the risk and talking to someone and being charismatic and just being in a relationship with that person, or creating that relationship. And Keith Ferrazzi is a business guy that's very good of making these relationships. And he would say, oh, I did this, oh, I did that. And this book was published a while ago. It was originally published in 2005, and I feel like 20 years ago, 30 years ago, we were more lenient or more forgiving about people who took big risks in introducing themselves. And I feel like now we don't have that same forgiveness. And if I was to try to do some of the things that he did, it would blow up in my face. So I feel like I did learn the gist of being, all right, you just got to be courageous and do it. But that's all I truly learned from this book. And I need to figure out how I can take the tips that he talked about in his book and try to fit it in a more modern day setting and in my industry. Because him being a business person and me being an actor, those are two completely different industries which require two different types of networking. I'm glad I've read it. It was enlightening, but I will not read it again. But yeah, that's all I have for you guys. Those are just like 5 books that I didn't particularly enjoy this year. Let me know how you feel about them down below. Maybe I missed something and you enjoyed them. Or maybe talk about books that you also didn't like. Or if you don't really have anything to add and just want to let me know that you are here, feel free to leave an emoji. As always, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I guess it's ta-ta for now. Bye guys.